I think we're in a pretty good spot here for the Navy. You know, this is the largest naval base in the world. And so when it really comes down to, is there going to be another BRAC? Well, that's a decision by our elected leadership. Some of the services need a BRAC. We're about the right size in our Navy. We've right-sized ourselves pretty well over the years. What's important for us to remember is that, you know, today we couldn't build another air station or a naval base just from the environmental regulations that are out there today. So what we have is what we have. Here in the area, once again, we're in a pretty good spot, in a very supportive, probably the most supportive community I've ever lived in.
And that was kind of the follow-up question, is the community always worries about the economic impact if they could, because in 2005 when Fort Monroe faced some BRAC, and then there was the threat that, I believe it was that Oceana may lose thousands. So you don't see any possibility of that in the future?
I don't. Now, if our elected leadership says we're going to do a BRAC, then we'll go through the BRAC process. But I think should that decision be made, I think our Navy's about sized correctly. And as I look at where our Navy, the ports and airfields we have, and apply it to this local area, I think this local area is okay.
With the back to the Mahan shooting and the Navy Yard review, is there anything you can say about the findings of the overall installation security, or what we might see be put into effect?
Well, first off, there is, I am very satisfied with the security of our installations. If we had a problem, a systemic problem that we needed to go fix, we would have put it in place right off the bat. So we're in pretty good shape there. I am not concerned there. Does that mean we can't be better? Absolutely we can be better in what we do. And the importance of whenever we have an incident, we investigate it thoroughly. We look at what is the cause factors. Did we have the proper procedures in place? Had we identified the proper procedures to be in place? Were they executed correctly? And then how was our response? And not just limited that investigation to how we responded to that incident. What if it was a larger incident? Could we have handled a much larger incident? And that's how we're looking at all of these investigations. They tell me I don't see anything new in any of the investigations that are out there that we haven't already previously identified and started putting process in place to fix.
But maybe they weren't enough?
It could be that it may not have been enough. It could have been the response wasn't correct. Someone might not have done their job correctly. We might have had the wrong, I might have had the wrong instruction and guidance out there, commander's intent out there. These are all the things that we look at. You know, we don't limit it to, as we do an investigation, you know, I'm accountable for force protection for all of the facilities in CONUS for the United States Navy. And so were my instructions, did I give the proper guidance out there? Had I put in place the proper instruction, and then was that instruction followed? You know, we could find out in the investigation that I hadn't put out proper guidance. That's why we do this investigation. That's why it takes so long that we have the checks and balances, that we review the investigation thoroughly to make sure no stone is unturned.
So it won't be some sort of major overhaul of security or policies based on the review of the installation-wide security? I
don't see a major overhaul of anything. Do I see us putting things in place to make us better? Absolutely. But a major overhaul, I don't see that.
Can you comment on any of those?
I'm unable at this time. I think it would be inappropriate.
Okay. Yeah. And do you know when that will be finalized?
From the Mahan investigation, it's up at the Vice Chief of Naval Operations, and that'll be coming out. For the Navy Yard investigation, you know, we know it was an insider threat, and could we have prevented the insider threat? That's a very, very difficult problem to fix. So from the Navy Yard investigation, we're looking at it. How well what procedures did we have in place? Did those procedures work? Could we have had other procedures in place? You know, was the guidance correct? And then how was our response to that incident for the incident that it was, and then how was our overall response should that event have been larger? And was it isolated to the Navy Yard? Any of those procedures or incidents isolated to the Navy Yard? Or is it across all of our naval installations that we're accountable for? So that's kind of how we took that approach. And out of that investigation, I'll tell you, we didn't find, once again, anything new that we hadn't already identified, and we're trying to put processes in place to fix.
Okay. With that 32, the number of suicides that you mentioned a few minutes ago, was a new number to me, and I think I read something recently that suicide is surpassing combat-related deaths.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what would you say about suicide and other response to this increased number?
Yeah, well, first off, we're just a reflection of society. So if you want to look at it just within the Navy or within the individual services, you also need to look at it within our society at all, because we're a reflection of society. We are very concerned about every one of our losses of our sailors, especially if in the case of suicide. So our problem is that we can't, if we identify someone that needs, or they come forward that they need help, we have the greatest support structure in the world. We can take them out of their work environment and give them, it's all life stresses. Is it financial? Is it marital? Is it relationship? Is it work related? Whatever it happens to be, if somebody's backpacked, unable to cope, we can help. We have that structure. Our problem is identifying people that need that help. So we take every cry for help very, very seriously and get them their help. And we're not always successful. And so it's quite frankly, it's my number one concern of all of the destructive behaviors that are out there. It's the one that we have to go after the hardest.
With the possibility of more sequestration, and I understand what you were mentioning, we don't see the impacts immediately. We see them kind of down the road manifest a few years later. So what might it look like in a few years because of this sequestration, and if maybe another one comes into play? Well,
sequestration is the law of the land. And so if the law is carried out, we've got to buy this year. Next year it's going to be, we're going to be confronted. What will be different next time is when we went through it the first time, our guidance was to spend the money as if sequestration wasn't going to happen, and then in the last 4 months of the fiscal year, we had to come up with a 12-year spending plan and make it work inside of 4 months. That was hard. This year, this next time, should that be the case, we're going to do it over a 12-year plan based on that sequestration levels. So that will help us make better decisions. We won't be forced to make some of the less, which you might think were wrong decisions, but they're decisions that had to be made given the environment we were in. We can make better decisions.
And what would be impacted in terms of force readiness?
Well, the impacts for sequestration for us usually are delayed, where we see the effects. So we're seeing the effects of sequestration today in our shipyards and our aircraft depots because of the decisions we had to make through sequestration. It lags. The impacts lag.
Can we talk about the impacts that we're seeing now based on the sequestration?
Sure.
It's been almost a year.
It has, but the impact of the hiring, not being able to hire in our aviation depots, the work stoppage as a result of it has created a backlog in our aviation depots that is really hard to dig your way out of that particular hole. Those are the sorts of things. What I call the periodicity between action and effect shows up later. The reason it shows up that way is because sequestration, most of the impact comes out of readiness. And in our readiness model, we choose to go into what we call the bathtub. We choose to go into a lower readiness level by design. And so the question is how long and how deep we're in that low level in the case of sequestration. And then as we come out in time and money, how much money do we have to spend? How much time does it take to get the forces ready to go at the right readiness level? We're able to work our way through that because we have a little bit more flexibility because it is a hollow readiness model.
So we're seeing the impacts in the depots and with the work stoppages, but that's not affecting current readiness levels, right? Because you dipped in, or how do you?
Well, I would.
Maybe
sure, they are.
So
in the case of aircraft, airplanes are supposed to be reworked at the depot level because there's a bigger backlog because of sequestration. They're now not coming out like they should have been, if that makes sense. They should have come out 6 months ago, and now they're coming out, 6 months late, and then we were expecting them 6 months ago. That's how that delay is in there. and we'll just have to lead our way through it. That's the challenges we're confronted with.
Now you mentioned again in the kind of the group session, sometimes the Navy maybe even goes hard on accountability, and I'd say monthly, and that's not an exact number, but we'll get an email, a press release that a CO or an XO has been relieved of duties for some sort of negligent leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that something that's of a concern?
Sure. Anytime a leader fails, that's a concern of mine. The question is what did the leader fail for? The ones that we want to, some people just fail in command. They aren't successful. Now they may have a change of command with a cake and a band, but they didn't do as well as we had hoped them to do. Command is different. You're a different person coming out of command than when you went into command. I learned that from a master chief who told me, Skipper, it was fun watching you grow up and develop as a leader. We understand that some people just don't do as well. Some people actually thrive when they're get confronted with those challenges, command, and they relish the opportunity. The ones that I want to stamp out are bad personal decisions. Those are the inexcusable ones. Drinking and driving, abusive leadership, things of that nature. Those are personal choices, and they should have known better. I mean, it's no surprise. It should be no surprise to any of them, and it's not when those actions occur.
How are we doing on time? Close. Okay, I think I just have one more question. Talking about the deployment schedule and the 7-month number, there are a lot of different branches or subsections of the Navy in this area. So does this apply to everyone?
No, we're trying to get anybody that's on, like our Navy Expeditionary Combat Command forces are on 6-month deployments. We do not want to take them to 7, 8, or 9 months. We're going to keep them at 6 months. We know that that's a good, sustainable model. It's the ones that are, Bush just got back on a 9-month model. That's not sustainable. We have got to get that left. We have got to get those deployment lengths under control where families are okay with their loved ones going on deployment for a period of time, because they know that that's what the Navy does. But the 9-month model is not sustainable. We have got to get it down.
And why? I mean,
because
I'm a Navy family. I get it, but how do you explain it?
Well, as a Navy brat, when my dad went on 12-month deployments, it wasn't much fun to see him go, and it was really hard when he moved back into the house after a year, right? And I remember my kids when I come back, my kids going, Dad, you're not in charge anymore when you come back home. So the problem is what is that duration? What is the acceptable that people that will want to make this a career and they know they're going to go away for a long period. Their loved ones are going to go away for long periods of time, or you're going to leave your family for a long period of time. What is that length of time? Where is that sweet spot? And so, in this case, over a 3-year period, we're going to be asking them for a 7-month deployment, but they'll be home in that 3-year period, a 7-month deployment, and total time at home be about 72%. Well, that's pretty good. We think that that's a sustainable model. As I talk to sailors and their families, they go, yeah, okay, if you can follow through on that's a good number. We know 9 months in a 3-year period is unsustainable. We just know
it's about retention.
It's all about retention. Yeah, I missed that. That's what you were looking for.
No, that makes sense.
It is all about, because we recruit the sailor, we retain the family, and so we have to get on a deployment model that the family's willing to sign up for.